Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another month of the Chichester Chats. I am Phil. There's Lilith. And, of course, the man, the myth, the 3D artist, the 3D printer artist himself, Mr. DG Chichester.
Hey, guys. It's good to see you both, or see you at least, Phil. Lilith is hiding behind a lovely Nick Fury illustration. But thank you for having me again.
That's right. And, of course, yes, Lilith, going with the theme. This time we are doing Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. 15 through 19. So I know we talked one before. I think that was like a fill-in arc. So is this when you began like the month as the monthly writer on the book?
Yeah, at this point I was the regular writer on the title. So when I became the regular writer, that would have been the starting off with the Butch Guice, Jackson Guice run, and that was the resurrection of Von Strucker and a lot of very Cold War stuff. I picked up on some of the themes from the small fill-in arc, and the regular run didn't come that long after that. I think Greg Wright, who was the editor, sort of had that in mind if things were going to change, and when things did change, he offered it to me, and then this would come a little bit later in that regular run.
I mean, you wasted no time. You're like, we're going to space.
Yeah. It was I was and am a big space nut. Not as much today as I used to be, which is oddly enough because certainly there's a lot more going on in terms of space exploration or technology than there was then. But it seemed like it could be a fun story, and had it in mind based on a couple of things, and then it ended up turning out a little bit differently than I thought, and I think led to a pretty good story, but also a little bit of post-time regret on my part. As you know, I always get into some over analysis on these things, but I think the story works out pretty well.
Before we get into the analysis, did you have schematics of a space shuttle on your wall?
I had a bad plastic model of the shuttle.
Oh,
I was a big model builder for a long time, which probably led to some of my interest in 3D modeling and even the 3D printing. And I was the sort of person who just had these visions of 3D model building in my head that never quite came to fruition. But I kept trying. I had this. When I grew up, the guy who lived next door, the guy I was friendly with, his brother had, I think, a complete collection of, if you guys are at all familiar with the old Aurora monster model kits. So Aurora was a well-known model making. Plastic model making company, and they had these incredible model kits of the classic monsters and more, Phantom of the Opera, Frankenstein, Werewolf, and they were amazingly detailed, beautiful things. And this guy who built them next door was a great model builder even at that time. So these things looked like they did on the cover of the box. They were real, they were beautiful, lines were filled in. And of course, that was always in my mind. And so when I would build the models, like the space shuttle, the glue would overrun and melt the plastic, and the painting job looked like it was done by Crayola. But I had a good intentions in mind. So definitely, I had enough knowledge of the shuttle to make it workable.
I've recently I was like, oh, I should get some Star Trek ships, and Lilith's like, that's too complicated for you. She's like, it's like my mother. She's like, that's too complicated for you. Don't be doing that. I'm like, oh, all right.
Well, no, it is, but like you can buy them put together, but I feel like it's a real art, and it takes a lot of patience and a lot of openness.
I built the Enterprise a long time ago, and the nacelles are the trickiest part. At least they were, to get to balance out correctly and not put them on the pylons or whatever, and have the nacelles sort of like tilt forward or back. Now maybe they've corrected the models in that regard. I had a complete set of plastic model kits that I had, and this is space related, so we'll stay on it. but I did a signing at a comic book shop 1,000 years ago, and the guy had all these Japanese plastic models of aliens. So it was the Power Loader, it was the Sulaco, it was the Nostromo shuttle, that Ripley escapes in. It was the APC, the troop carrier from Aliens. It was amazing. They were really detailed, beautiful on the box. Of course, I then opened them and said, "Oh my God, I'll never be able to build these," and to the vision of my mind. But I held on to them forever. They moved from house to house, and I would keep moving them around, thinking someday I'm going to get to these. And then finally, for the most part, I gave up on them, and I gave them to Tim Toohey, who was I worked with years ago, was the editor on the last issue of Daredevil I did, 380, and he's a big Aliens fan. And I just said, "Do you have these?" And he said, "No, I do not." And I said, "Well, now you do," because he's an incredible model builder. And I just sent them to him and said, "You're gonna give these the TLC they need."
Oh, nice.
I have an unbuilt Enterprise for you, Phil. Like, if you want it, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good. I'm not smart enough to do it. Remember?
Do you have the patience and the time? Because like I like to do mine just in a whole afternoon. You have a child and a wife, so that's what I mean. Like,
do you do the lighting, Lilith? Do you do the fiber optics and put the light inside it and all that, or just the model kit?
Just the model kit.
Okay.
If I want lights, I'm just building it. I'm buying it built already.
Exactly. I'm getting some like $4,000 sideshow collectible thing, and put it out there in a stand.
I mean, we're totally off track, but you're a big Star Trek fan. Have you been watching Picard, the current season of Picard?
No.
It's good.
I've heard it's great, and I watched a couple episodes of the first season of Picard. Just sort of, well, this is okay, and I like Patrick Stewart a lot, and but then just didn't pursue it, and then everyone's going gaga, and you've just added to the mix on season 3, and I actually just posted. There was a conversation Glenn Greenberg was having, and I said, now everybody's talking about this. I need to watch it, but do I need to slog through seasons 1 and 2? And
many episodes at least.
I know, but it's just
modern TV.
No, not real. Not real.
So much to watch.
Yeah, you really don't have to do the first 2 seasons to watch the new one, because it's basically getting the band back together.
Right. Yeah, I'll definitely figure out a way to to watch it. Maybe that doesn't require me to subscribe to Paramount Plus again. Maybe there's some freebie deal where I can get a 7-day trial and just binge it.
I know they were doing that for a while. I don't know if they're still doing that or not, but yeah, they were doing like a free trial period.
Right.
Just wait till the end of the season.
Yeah, no, that's even better. Yeah, that's what I'll really do. Totally.
All right. Well, who else went to space? Nick Fury.
Nick Fury went to space. Exactly.
So once again, you've expressed doubts about your work. So come on, what was your problem?
No,
with this
it's not. It's not doubts about the writing in this case. I think that the story is pretty good.
It is.
It's got the good action. It keeps the pace up. In retrospect, I might have turned the pace down a little bit. It suffers from the 90s disease of keep it going, ratchet it down. My regret is the artist, Herb Trimpe, because I did not take advantage of getting to know him on this book. And I think that this was, I don't know if I think we've talked about this or touched on this in the past with Herb Trimpe, and this is a guy who, a marvelous craftsman, a really good artist, integral to Marvel's history and success, and at this point in time, especially, like a lot of artists, but I know Herb particularly, because of this essay he wrote for the New York Times, was marginalized, totally marginalized. His contract, which he had, was not ignored. Artists had to find the work in the form of these contracts, but for somebody who was a yeoman artist, had begun to become increasingly ignored, couldn't find work, called everybody he knew, couldn't get a job. And in the rush to imagize everything, the best he got from editors was, you've got to change your style to be more like this. And I think there's aspects of his art in this book which maybe shows some of that, trying to kind of become something he's not. And my problem is not with that. I think the storytelling is all there. It is in retrospect, because I didn't know this at the time. I wasn't thinking through this at the time. Was that somebody like that would have been going through this kind of behind the scenes, but also I was busy enough with other things, it seems, in my head, that I never, took the time to communicate with him or get to know him as I would try to do with a lot of projects. This felt more to me in retrospect that I was doing the stories and I was turning them into the editor, and I was just kind of moving on to the next story or some other book. So, and then the pages would come back and it'd be like, oh, okay, now I'll script them, and not having that outreach to him to even say, hey, saw your stuff, it's great, or let's talk through the next, the next chapter. I haven't quite fleshed that out. I'm thinking this, maybe there's some of that that you might want to do instead. It's total regret on my part to have not done somebody the respect and justice of communicating with anybody, but especially somebody of his caliber and history. And if you haven't read that essay, it's worth finding, and it's heartbreaking, because this is after he's been totally marginalized, and he's sort of writing it in the, of what he's had to do to try to recreate himself outside of being primarily a high caliber artist for most of his adult life, and still having, he was younger than I am now when he wrote this essay, and he still had obviously a big part of his life after that, and a family to support and so forth. So it shows sort of the fickleness and the quick turn that things can have. So it gives me even more regret having read that years and years and years past, and then thinking back to this story particularly, that I had the opportunity to get to know really, I think a legendary artist and a great artist, and I wasted that opportunity. So there you go, downer, but trying to be honest and give you something a little bit beyond the spycraft.
I mean, I enjoyed the art in this, but I didn't recognize it as Herb Trimpe's at first. He was trying something else. Yeah, because when I hear Herb Trimpe, the first thing I think of is like his run on the Hulk. I think that's the first time I saw his art. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, totally solid, really impactful, had a Kirby-ish influence, but it's his own thing. Great, really good storyteller, knew how to pace a page and a panels and frame everything out. But yes, you're seeing that, and probably the best he was getting was, hey, if you can't draw like Image, you're not going to get hired. Not a guided hand of, do this with your art and do this with your art. So you've got a guy who's got muscle memory and skills based upon X, saying you have to become write triple X without any real desire on his part, right? It wasn't like, as an artist, he's saying, you know what, I do want to recreate myself. I do want to try something different. It just being told, you're not going to get hired if you can't draw like pick your guy. And so you're trying to kind of morph yourself into something you are not passionate about, and maybe you're not capable of, which is no ding on his talent, right? Not being capable of it is just, why should that person be drawing like this?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's horrible because, they never want to look like a certain thing back in the 90s. And like these days, I love the art, but a lot of it looks so similar. I guess maybe it's the digital now, just the digital. But yeah, back in the day, like you could look at art in 2 seconds. You're like, I know who that is. That's Herb Trimpe. This is whoever. Yeah.
And some people didn't resonate with you, right? Much as some
Yeah.
today, some people won't resonate with you, but I think you're right about the digital aspect of today and the coloring. And this isn't a ding on the talent of
No.
the many colorists that are working, but the coloring, quote unquote, doesn't help when everything is, in a lot of cases, is so rendered or over rendered, and everything's a bleed page, right? It kind of becomes this saturation of awesomeness. That if you saw this back in the 90s or early 2000s, my God, look what's possible. But now when everything's that way, it's sort of just like, okay, it just sort of blurs together. But yeah, that's my regret of the story, and that's just nothing that can be solved. And I don't have many regrets. I've made mistakes in creatively doing things, but this one's always kind of hung over my head, especially after having read that essay a few years back.
But no, the whole thing with the art, yeah, you talked about before, but as a writer, did they ever come to you with stuff like that in the 90s where it's like, oh, hey, you have to, like, I don't know, sexy it up, or hey, we need like more explosions, or hey, more violence, or
No, I think I had that all in hand.
Oh yeah, you're the guy they had to tone down. You're the guy. You're the guy they had to tone down. I forgot.
Yeah, I think I was well attuned to, for better or worse, to the 90s vibe of the rhythm of a type of I mean, being a big movie fan, being a big pop culture fan, I think I was clearly in tune with whatever was going on, from Stallone to Schwarzenegger to, God help me, Steven Seagal, who made at least one good movie. And so I think I had that, I think I had those beats down right. And I had the quips and the action and all of that stuff, going pretty well. Again, in retrospect, that the stories probably suffer from some of that, in the sense that, you could have taken that extra page and had a little bit more character building, instead of kind of another, impactful turn. But it would have, where I know I was doing something right was I noticed recently that most of the epic, the big format collections that they bring together, nowadays, you guys have seen these, where they bring these big, not epic comics, but just epic Marvel bound paperbacks of, here's a bunch of Daredevil stories, here's a bunch of Nick Fury stories, here's a bunch of Punisher stories, whatever. I would say 8 times out of 10, if my stories are in there, even if I'm not the lead writer, they've stolen one of my titles for the title of the collection. So,
oh yeah, did I see is Last Rites epic collection out? It's some of Anne's stories, and then it's like the beginning of your run.
But it's almost always my title. There's a Punisher or Captain America's collection, and Blood and Glory, the limited series, is in there, but the collection is called Blood and Glory. It's so I had the Steven Seagal, titling, mechanism down.
You had the clickbait title down, Pat.
I had the clickbait title down before. You're totally right. And so,
well, you needed that. And actually, I enjoyed this. It's because it's Apogee of Disaster, which is like a double entendre, right? Because it has to do with space and also the highest climax or something. So I thought that was really cool.
There you go.
As a word nerd.
As a word nerd. Yeah. To me, it's a little bit of a mouthful. It probably might have sold better if I just called it like, lunar disaster, Moonageddon,
Armageddon.
But yeah, that was definitely that was the space nerd, right, Lilith, playing it out and going, going for apogee. I'm gonna throw in some space terminology here.
I know. I was like, ooh, big word.
Exactly.
And can you go any bigger space nerd than Fantastic Four?
I was gonna say,
yes.
yeah. I was like, oh, this is a good one, Fantastic Four, yeah. Although Reed Richards is a villain, it's fine if nobody else.
just love how Nick Fury a lot of times will be like, yeah, you superheroes stay out of this. This is spy stuff. But then the minute he needs a shuttle, oh, hey, Reed, can I borrow your shit? Can I
exactly.
got something I can borrow?
Something? Got something for me? But that's again the beauty of the Marvel universe, and sometimes I was smart enough to take advantage of it. I think here, is a good example of that cross fertilization where you can, borrow things, in terms of not just characters, but also that, that connection. And sometimes I would totally ignore it and not think it through, as much. On Daredevil, I don't think I thought it through, as much because I was so focused on the quote unquote grittiness of the character and the city aspect, and didn't play off some other things, which might have been more fun in retrospect. But here, Fury, figuring he knows everybody, knows everything about everybody, and can leverage that for favor or blackmail in a way, was a good thing to work in.
Oh yeah.
Nick Fury, the original Space Force.
Exactly.
I love it. I really enjoyed this.
Oh yeah, even the villain who becomes a giant space monster.
Yeah, it's and that's it's not my favorite design, of it, but that's not dinging Herb, right? I think again he was twisting between directions and styles, but he does as much as he can with what he was under, I'm sure, in creating that kind of weird Modoc-ish, thing that this guy, becomes.
So did you give it?
It's definitely had rack appeal. The spinner rack appeal.
Oh,
These covers are outstanding, by the way. So.
Yeah, they're sharp.
Oh yeah, the art was not. Yeah, I didn't recognize Herb's art right away. But there was no problem. I had no problem with this art, but
no. But I just don't. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think he was credited for trying either. Right?
Yeah.
There's not. Yeah, like you said, there's nothing wrong with the art. You're not looking at it saying, "Shit, geez, that's shitty storytelling."
Yeah, no.
But it's not. It's neither here nor there. Right?
Yeah.
It's neither the classic, say, Herb Trimpe era visualizations, nor is it this over the top
90s
image stuff. And actually today, if you were to put a story out looking like this today, it has, I think, a kind of really unique, whatever, call it indie appeal or alternate, appeal. I mean, it there's so many different styles, available today, from various artists. It would sort of stand out, in that way. But I think he was probably not, I can't remember any conversations with the editor about the story really, and about the art, nobody was dinging it or something. But I also don't get the sense that he was being praised or supported for it.
So did you give him very detailed notes on the space monster villain, or was most of that his?
I can't recall, and as you guys know, I don't have any of that stuff to reference back in terms of reading those descriptions.
Damn Y2K crash.
Damn. Well, no, there's a Y2K crash. Is stupid Dan crash, but and stupid Dan didn't back up crash. But my plots, from the couple that I do have, left over from then, the literally one or two, and the way I would write things then would be fairly detailed, right? There would be, a sense of pacing, even though this was written as a plot, right? This would have been done, quote unquote, Marvel style, where I would have written page 1 to 2, all this stuff happens, page 3 to 5, all this stuff happens. I would always in my head kind of, beat sheet things out. So even though it was written as a plot, almost every paragraph was the sense this could be a panel. It's going to be up to the artist how to interpret it. And some would interpret it well and some would interpret it not so well. I felt that Herb tracked to that well. And I would put a fair amount of description in, right? This is what the shuttle looks like. This might be what the spacesuits look like. This is what the villain has become, right? He's morphed and melded with this technology, and now become this thing with these abilities and so forth. But he was responsible for ultimately that interpretation of it. And there was nothing I recall going back in and saying, okay, that's 80% of the way there. Let's take it. Mm-hmm. Let's tweak this and do that. Because again, my exchange with him was nil, foolishly. So the editor might have given him some notes. I don't know if there was any back and forth on that. Nothing in my mind, comes back that, oh, I told him to do this or to change this on this artwork or something.
And the restraint you showed, I thought we were gonna get more Fantastic Four, or did you not want them to overshadow Nick Fury and his team? Because I mean, especially once we hit the blue area of the moon, I'm like, oh, we're gonna see the Thing punching this alien anytime now.
Yeah, I don't know if it was restraint or again just missed opportunities. Right? Why didn't I have one of the Fantastic Four go along with them? Like the Thing would have been perfect, right? Sort of. Reed wants me to come along because he doesn't trust you with his equipment. He knows it's always, it never comes back in one piece. That would actually been inspired and played with it a little bit more. I don't think there was any. Was the Fantastic Four in? I'm pretty sure the Fantastic Four was in Ralph's office still at that point. Ralph Macchio's office. Even that wouldn't have been a problem, right? We've talked before about sometimes there was issues borrowing characters from different offices, and Nick Fury wasn't in Ralph's office, but I was very friendly with Ralph, and Ralph was editing me on Daredevil, so there was no problem borrowing the Fantastic Four's technology or using them, in the issues as we did. So I think it was probably that sort of insular attitude kind of creeping back around the edges. This is a Nick Fury story. It's got to be more espionage-y and seat of the pants and ingenuity versus bringing in a superpowered thing, or thing meaning anything, let alone the Thing. But I think if I was to do this today, I would have been more, let's grab that guy and stick him along for those that kind of reason exactly. Because as when they bring this thing back, it's a wreck. So anyway, what? Reed's gonna kill you now, or I'm the one who's gonna take the heat for this.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. I lost my train of thought. Okay.
You're getting old, Phil.
I know. My birthday's coming up. I am getting old.
Some ginkgo biloba.
Yikes. Okay. Okay, Lilith, do you have any smart mouth? You got any questions?
No, this is a really straightforward, good. Oh. I love a good space story. As an X-Men fan, I love a good space story.
Yeah, and I would say,
and it's espionage in space.
Mm-hmm.
I like
and
it.
you said you don't care for Fury overall, or you don't care for Fury of this era?
Just overall, like the first 2 volumes of the book is just very I don't know, feels like almost like Captain America's like a leftover time that I don't really relate to very well. But this feels like a much more volume 3 is very much updated, modernized, little James Bondy. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I love James Bond. I love the lean into the espionage of it all, and him being kind of more charismatic and dynamic and sly with it, instead of just being over authoritarian, I guess, in the previous 2 volumes, from the things that I've read from those previous 2 volumes.
That's a great read. I mean, your interpretation of things, that's and I would agree, if it's just an authoritarian character, not terribly interesting, because it's just sort of then, either the trick a writer or creative team brings in to sort of solve the problem, or just whatever, just a overly powerful character demanding other characters do stuff. And you guys know my fandom of spy stories and James Bond, so certainly that's what I was trying to pour into this, and have it be somebody who is informed and slick and knowledgeable and has all this spycraft, he could draw from, but, a little bit of MacGyver without even thinking about MacGyver.
He has more personality, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm glad that came through, I was always like, the struggle with the team thing was something I had always picked up from when I took over the book. He had this extended team, of things. And, in retrospect, I always wonder if I sort of took that along because I felt like I had to in some ways. But, there's some aspects of the spy stories he could even gone more solo on.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Lilith. You did. Okay, you reminded me of what I wanted to ask. Okay, like Lilith was talking about the previous volumes, like you did honor what came before, but like, did you have like a set agenda where you like, I want to do this or that, something that hadn't been done before? Did you want to flesh out the character more and show like more than the authoritative Nick Fury, the man behind the image? And
I didn't have the man behind the image. Now I would, right? Mm-hmm. Now, from a sense of maturity and the way I think about writing now, I every now and again when I would do Fury, I would drop little bits and, what is, there was a bit I think I did in that, Misbegotten, Punisher Black Widow thing, where, he says the reason he smokes cigars is to kind of remind himself of mortality, even though he has, the whatever the infinity formula, in his veins. But, so I think there's places where I could have brought more of that out. But I did want him to be more of a James Bondish character, and not just the slickness or the spyness of it, but some of the, what is he carrying with him? What does that mean when you're part of that kind of, place of secrets and double crosses and betrayals. And you see some of that more in the Jackson, the Butch Guice, work. There was a lot of double crossing and spycraft and things there. This story itself, I think, is just more pure spy action. But my agenda was to play the character like that, to play out some things I liked from my influences there. Beyond Bond, there's a series of spy books called the Matt Helm books. Dean Martin, of all people, did a series of pretty ridiculous, awful movies in the 60s and late 60s or whatever.
Could do no wrong in the 60s.
Exactly. So that, they're very smarmy, lazy films in a way, and not at all like what the books are, which are very, very hard espionage. Matt Helm is a spy who worked with like the OSS in World War II. It's pretty brutal. It's formulaic, but I really enjoyed them, and they had a lot of great twists and turns, and probably that was a character I was trying to emulate, as well. And I was trying to kind of play out the agendas I had set overall with Strucker rising up and Strucker destroying certain aspects of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Fury looking to rebuild them. But as I did with some other things, I played the long game too long, thinking, I'm going to be on this book for a while. I can draw it out, as opposed to just get right back into it and just, start to, don't have the Kingpin vanish for issues. Don't have Strucker going, off here. You gotta stick the landing on what you've set up, because you may not be around. And in fact, I was not. So
the lesson, don't pull Chris Claremont and have like a 10-year plan in effect, or more in effect, don't be like, I'll answer this in year 7.
Yeah, you can have a 10-year plan, or
not anymore.
No, not anymore.
I don't think even the big names get 10 years anymore.
No, but you have to know that it's the old Alfred Hitchcock thing. I think it was Hitchcock, which was if you show a gun in Act 1, make sure you shoot it by Act 3. It's not just leaving, Strucker cackling behind the scenes. But it's got to play out a lot sooner, with that. Otherwise it's like, what just happened?
Well, is that the dance of doing comics? It's like, okay, yeah, you have to shoot the gun by Act 3, but is Act 3 going to come in 3 months, 6 months, or are you going to be here 2 years from now?
Right. And sometimes you think you're going to be, you're serving the story well, or the reader well by establishing a new environment. I want that to play out for 6 months, or I want that to play out for a year. And in your head, you've got all these things laid out. Right? Maybe you've got a chart, maybe you're really smart. You've mapped it out, or you've actually sketched out a bunch of issues. So for you, it's all there, but the reader doesn't know anything. The reader knows this month to month thing. And the hook of Strucker and Fury, was such an important one in my mind, right? Strucker's behind the scenes. He's toying with Fury. Fury doesn't know he's back. That could have been an earlier reveal for Fury, instead of dragging it on. And then, well, what does that mean? Maybe that drove certain things. Maybe there was technology on the moon that he was going to upset Strucker with. I don't know. It could have been just like threading it out better and more if it was really meaningful. And it was to me at one point, but then I would get lost in these individual stories, because I had a month to month thing to fill. Right? What's going to happen this month? How do you keep it interesting? So
yeah, that's definitely a struggle to keep it interesting, but also keep that overall picture, because people are fickle.
Right, and it's the bane of monthly comics, right? Which is where you're always having to deliver a monthly thing, and you never get any. Even if you resolve a story, right? Here's this 5-issue arc. Here's this thing that happens. And okay, that story feels fairly complete. But now I go on to issue 6, and it's not like, and you're still pulling the continuity forward, right?
Yeah.
There's still that next piece that you have to make a continuance of, which could undermine, what you did before, even because now the status quo has to be reset and you have to start all over again.
And the thing that annoyed me back in the day is like, someone might be really trucking with the story, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, I don't know, editorial. Well, no, someone behind it's, or just issues behind the scenes, the writer gets pulled, a new writer comes in, thinks, I don't like certain parts of this. They just drop certain story elements or characters, and it's just like, what happened to that character?
I don't think we touched on it.
We never saw them again.
Exactly.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't even know what happened with it. I mean, after I was taken off this book, I don't even know what the hell happened. But so that may be a case here. I think I mentioned this, but if I didn't, it's pretty funny to me, at least. I finally read, the couple 3 issues of Daredevil after I got kicked off that.
Oh,
and it. If I had read those back in the day, you probably wouldn't be talking to me now, because I probably would have went and killed myself, because it's like devastating. But now that I laughed out loud, they gave it to like there's a 1-issue Warren Ellis story where he does literally everything except piss on the costume.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can edit it out if you want, but it's just he just spends 22 pages. Bemoaning this costume change and literally ripping it apart. And, it basically says, who the fuck thought this was a good idea? So it's this British, demeaning thing to it. And then DeMatteis comes on, Mark DeMatteis, who I love as a person and a writer, but then he does a more elegant version of that. And I don't know if this was his drive, or I'm sure Ellis was directed, get rid of this costume as quickly as possible. And he was like, yeah, great. But DeMatteis' story is equally kind of ridiculous and vicious in its own way. And I think Mark is a marvelous writer and a marvelous human being. But, he goes through this whole story where Matt's insane. Matt doesn't know what he was doing. His brain is melted, with these two fractioned identities, and his head is suddenly, sent him off in different mental directions. So, that reading that after the fact, way after the fact, I'm laughing out loud. But from a reader perspective, maybe readers love that, but I can imagine it was like a switch. it's a big switch from what I was doing. You know?
Oh yeah, 5 minutes into that DeMatteis story, he's just like, oh, he killed off the Jack Batlin part of his brain. Yeah,
it broke his brain, right? Oh my God, Matt Murdock, who's handled all this, suddenly can't handle an alternate pseudonym that he's established. You know, that was his too fragile, and that's not, to be really clear, no ding on Mark at all. He's a great writer.
So do you think was that editorial mandate? They're like, get him back to status quo as quick as possible, and also it helped that issue 350 was coming, so it's like, oh yeah, the triumphant return in issue 350 or whatever.
I think. I mean, I don't know. I never talked to Mark about it. You know, except when I found out. You know, when I clarified, I heard you just got out for the book, and nobody told me about it yet. And he was like, yeah. But it was, I presume so. You know, that there was clearly no love for what was going on there by the new editorial chief, you know, Bobby Chase and such. So for whatever reason, they want to kind of get this back to status quo to fit in the Marvel Knights, you know, KNIGHTS, you know, thing that was coming up. And you know, even in my own mind, you know, 350 was going to be a return to status quo in a way. I mean, in my semi short to long term thinking, the exploration of what Batlin meant to Murdoch and its positives and but flaws would have gotten back around to an aspect of, you know, he wasn't going to stay Batlin forever, right? Yeah. That was not my intention. But I was going to use Batlin in a way to more fully explore the importance of Matt Murdock, right? How important is Matt Murdock and what Matt Murdock represents as a vigilante and as a lawyer to Matt Murdock versus losing that aspect of him. Now he's just a vigilante, right?
Okay. So nothing about pissing on the suit. Okay.
No, you know, that might have been, you know, there might have been some things, but yeah, there was no, I mean, it was really, honest to God, it was like, you know, like I said, in the day, I would have been too fragile, ego-wise, to say, oh my God, they're like, you know, it's like reading a bad review, right? You know, it like crushes you and like, oh my God, nobody liked this and whatever. But to me, it was like comical. It's like, you did this. It's your costume. It's your character, right? You as a company invested in this. There's a little toy, you know, really, you know, they did a little, I actually have the original little toy, you know, up there in the corner. You know, they did cards and other stories.
325. They had a poster in the issue with him in the new suit. Yes,
poster. You know, of which I'll have copies at GalaxyCon.
Damn it.
Yeah. So to me, it was like that was somebody saying, you know, to Warren Ellis, like, yeah, just go to town on this costume, and in that gleeful British take the piss out of things way, let's piss on this thing and just, you know, just because it just ranks on the costume for 22 pages. It's asinine.
Oh my God. I mean, this keeps coming back up. We have to talk to Alan Smithy soon. Okay.
Anytime. He's always around, you know. But my brain might fracture. You know, I don't know if I can keep it contained between D.G. Chichester, Dan Chichester, and Alan Smithy. You know, there's no way to balance it out between the three. But anyway, Fury was relatively stable in comparison. You know.
So what? So did we get to it? Was there any agenda point where like you're like, let me explore something that hasn't been explored with Nick Fury before? Or
you know, that's it was really not, I don't think in that way. It was more just putting my quote unquote mark on the character and having fun with the character. Again, is a big James Bond fan and a espionage story fan. He's a great toy to play with. He's a great character to play with. You could play the authoritative stuff, Lilith, you know, if you wanted to, the authoritarian, or you could even just play the man out of time, you know, aspect, which to me is the more interesting thing at that point, you know, that he's got that history and he's lived longer than he should.
And he doesn't have that goody two shoes aspect of Captain America, so it's
not at all
fun to play with it.
Well, that's right. That's what I was about to just say. It's like, yeah, Captain America, also the man out of time, but he slept through how many decades? Yeah, but I mean, Captain America slept through how many decades? Nick Fury lived it all. You know, he's lived every moment since World War II.
Well.
Right. Yeah, you know, as much as I did a lot of research into spycraft and, you know, espionage terms and espionage tricks and stuff. What I would have liked to have brought more into was that I've lived through all this stuff more, and that character of it. You know, famously, now guys, if you know this is spy geek stuff, but Christopher Lee, the actor, right, is the cousin of Ian Fleming, who created James Bond. And the legend is that Bond is actually based on Christopher Lee in a lot of ways, because Christopher Lee was in the OSS, the Office of Special Services, in World War II. And, you know, famously, you know, on you know, the shooting of the Lord of the Rings films where he's Saruman, you know, Peter Jackson, the director, was, you know, saying something about, you know, well, this guy's going to knife, you know, somebody here, or, you know, maybe it was Grimworm or whatever, you know, he's going to get knifed, or Grimtongue, he's going to get knifed. And this is what, you know, it's going to sound like. And Christopher Lee was like, I know what the sound of a knife going into a man's body sounds like. Thank you very much. And
that's where you go to your trailer for the day and avoid that person.
Exactly. Shit, I'm not going to do whatever you want. You're going to roll the cameras. But my point being, you know, reading up more on, I mean, Lee didn't, you know, talk about it at all, but there's certainly history of actual spies who've lived through that, and injecting more of that into Fury than I already did. There was some of that, but I think that historical element of you're living with all these things that you've done, and the secrets you've learned, and the secrets you've kept, that's heavy stuff that I think could have played out in a really cool way. Maybe not for the time. Maybe it's more me just thinking that way now. But I would have, if it was in my mind, it was like, oh, but I need another page of action, you know, and not sacrifice the pacing that way. But it would have definitely done more service to the character.
I mean, I think I brought this up to you the first time we talked Nick Fury. It's just like, I think that would have been interesting. It's, you know, Fury's like, you know, I'm the guy who's been alive for like 100 years. I want to die, but it's like, if I do die, you know, who's going to say Strucker's not going to like nuke the planet if I, you know.
Right. And, you know, that would have, again, it's, you say something like that, and that becomes a springboard, you know, nowadays. You know, that would have been the interesting reveal for, well, Strucker's still around, right? Imagine that, like the whatever I'm doing gets to the sort of point where that Fury is exhausted. I've been carrying all these secrets. I've been carrying all this stuff. I need to step back. Somebody else is going to take it over. And then the reveal is all the shit that's happened, Shield Central blowing up, and all this, you know, things that are going on behind the scenes and needling me. That's actually the Strucker. Not just Hydra, but Strucker. I can't retire, right? Only me, only I, you know, can take care of that, which would have been both hubris and a rejuvenation, you know, of the character. So, but I didn't do that.
And again, the Lilith's point, it's like, yeah, you can't be Captain America because you need someone in there who's, you know,
gonna get their hands dirty.
Black Ops, yeah. I gotta snap. Yeah. I gotta snap a guy's neck. I gotta snap a guy's neck. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and there's a lot of that. I mean, there's very much more of a Cold War feeling. You know, with my initial run with Butch, and you get that. You know, that sense. I mean, I never knew what I was going to get from Butch. I mean, Butch would just sort of draw the stuff. I mean, he followed the storyline and made the storylines come to life, but. You know, he paced it out in his own way, but it was always beautiful. It felt like it was James Bond movie poster stuff all the time.
But I mean, you did hit on some interesting things in this story. I think everyone can relate to. Yeah, don't go on a road trip with your current girlfriend and your ex.
Yes, important safety advice, Egon. Don't cross the streams.
In space, no one can hear the love triangle, yes.
Exactly.
Leave you on the blue side of the moon.
Right. I know how I can solve this love triangle.
But no, it's a good story because, again, not every Nick Fury story keeps my interest. Again, your Nick Fury stuff keeps my interest.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a great time with Fury, and but I think the traditionalism of, again, some of the things I picked up on, it's got to be this team, even the long-term relationships. Trying to kind of maintain that is when you think about it now. At least when I think about it nowadays. He's probably the kind of guy who would just not necessarily love him and leave him in a James Bond way, but sort of think about the heaviness of it, play that out a little bit more and just, does anyone really want to be saddled with me, or do I want to drag somebody into these things? He'd almost like clip the wings on a relationship sooner for those reasons than anything else.
Oh yeah. I mean, he can't date age appropriate.
That's right.
He's a vampire.
That's right. Or Leonardo DiCaprio. It's one or the other.
Everybody he dates, is younger. I'm not calling you out, Lilith. Okay? Lilith likes him young.
My house is made of glass. It is fine.
She likes him young and dumb. All right.
The heart wants what the heart wants, right?
Something wants what it wants.
Wow!
And I'm worried about my language.
Yeah.
Clearly he doesn't listen to Salty and Patty. Please don't listen to Salty and Patty. You stay away from that.
We dragged the secrets out of Lilith Hellfire.
But no, solid story. I think Space was an excellent choice. I think that's why I liked it too. Getting away from Earth with him, because it's just when he's on Earth, it's just literally the weight of the world on him. But in space, I feel like he kind of loosened up.
Oh, so you're saying in space he's weightless?
Ouch. No, that's a good analysis too. I think of and there's always something about putting people into different environments, that makes them have to step up and then think about, what you do with it. I didn't have enough of a longer run on the book to do it, but I think this is also another example of the satellite character, the villain. I just sort of neatly tie him up at the end and throw him in the ocean. Whereas this could have been something that could have come back, or at least some aspect of it could have come back. Somebody could have dredged it up from the bottom of the ocean and done something with it as a continuance, as opposed to, hey, I introduced this guy for 4 or 5 issues, and then you don't see him again.
No, and again, one of my favorite Nick Fury stories of yours is Last Rites. I mean, from Daredevil, just he's basically behind the scenes, just let Matt Murdock do most of the dirty work here.
Right, yeah. That's
Puppet Master.
That's high Fury to me. The thinking about it and that knowing all the secrets, right? Knowing Murdock is Daredevil, it's I don't care. Right, it's when they nail him early on, in that storyline, and they take him down with the vacuum formed foam and stuff, which seals him off, and screw your senses, and I know who you are, and I'm just going to light the match and watch this stuff go. So let it play all out. That was pure just rolling with the momentum on that, just this feels right. Let's just go and do this.
Oh yeah, and just I want to smack around Hydra. If it takes him taking down Fisk to do it, it's Fisk is an SOB. Let him fall.
That mere criminal, and
he's a humble spice merchant that was friendly.
A humble spice merchant,
an importer exporter.
We don't have enough humble spice merchants these days.
Again, I think it's your line. It always sticks in my head. It's when Daredevil tells him, that line about being a humble spice merchant, not really believable anymore because from a guy who owns a skyscraper.
I'm I would love if somehow they work that into the new Born Again stuff. It's not my line, but I mean, it's just I would love at some point to have somebody say, humble spice merchant.
Oh yeah, bring up that history. All right. Any other questions for this man, Lilith?
Nope. Let him do his shameless plugs. Let him have his great Saturday. I don't know if it's a great Saturday for everybody else, but it's pretty
I'm hoping,
nice
it's
where I'm at.
looking pretty good. A little overcast, but it's supposed to be warm. Sure. Folks can follow me, and this isn't shameless. This is just information. Storymaze.substack.com. Stories sometimes and new news and such. And then if anyone listening is in the Richmond, Virginia area, this coming week coming up, which is the 24th, 25th, and 26th of March, I will be at GalaxyCon there, wherever they stick me at some table or something, and doing available for talk and autographs and all good stuff that you do at a comic book convention or a pop culture convention or whatever GalaxyCon is.
And you did say you'd be open to do other conventions, right?
Yes. Actually, I'm going to do 3 of those for GalaxyCon.
Oh.
So there's this one. Then there's, I want to say, Austin in September, and then Austin, Texas, and then I think Columbus, Ohio in December. I think. So there's 3 of those, and then I'll be at Terrificon again in the summer. But if anyone listening knows of or runs other conventions, hit me up.
December in Ohio, you say?
I think that's right. That's probably not. It's probably not good weather, right?
Probably not. But I was gonna say I might have to plan a road trip.
But I'm pretty sure it's Columbus in Ohio. So that's it. So what's my homework?
All right. I mean, it keeps coming up. I think we got to do Alan Smithy next time.
We didn't do Alan Smithy already?
No. I mean, we've talked. It keeps coming up, but we haven't done the actual issues. So, let's do Daredevil 338 through 342.
All right, that's a good. That's actually going to be an interesting conversation because I did reread those. We won't take up more time. Not too long ago, and I have a much higher impression of Alan's work than I did for many years. So we'll talk about him then.
Yes, I think that's going to be an interesting chat.
Excellent. All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. A nice way to start a Saturday. And I hope you guys stay well. And we'll talk timing, for next time out.
All right. Yes. You have a good time too, sir. Thank you. Have fun at the convention.
All right, guys. Be well.